Welcome to the Let's Get Entrepreneurial podcast, your go-to resource for navigating the world of entrepreneurship.
In today's episode, we dive deep into the heart of entrepreneurship to explore the crucial distinctions between creating a sustainable, independent business versus crafting a job for oneself. We unpack insights on maintaining your vision and tools to shape your entrepreneurial journey with intention and clarity.
If you're looking to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit and transform your ideas into action, we invite you to follow our podcast.
The Let's Get Entrepreneurial podcast is your ultimate launchpad for igniting ideas and skyrocketing your entrepreneurial dreams. Tune in, buckle up, and let's unleash the entrepreneurial spirit within. Your two hosts will be Professor Gary Palin and serial entrepreneur Ryan Budden.
Hello, Professor Palin. How are we today?
Doing really well. How are you doing?
I'm doing brilliantly as always.
You have another busy day scheduled?
Slammed. I'm already seeing the notifications pop up all over the computer screen.
Well, let's jump into this then.
Absolutely. We're here to talk about something that's come up a lot in our podcast episodes, and we finally determined we should make an episode solely focused around it. And that's the difference between creating a job for yourself and creating a business. It's a really important distinction, if only to know what you're doing so you know what you're expected to get out of it.
People confuse the two. Most people I speak with, when you start asking them what are their goals, what are they trying to accomplish, they're really trying to create a job for themselves. There's nothing wrong with that, and our country's backbone is built on that, and they tend to be small businesses, and I encourage that, assuming that's what they want. But creating a business as a standalone entity is a totally different animal. In essence, you're building an entity that ultimately won't need you.
Yeah, that is the goal from day one. If you're creating a business, is to remove yourself at some point through an exit.
Whereas many people that want to talk to me about starting a business, they can never envision leaving the company. They're saying, why would I leave the company I just built? And that thought confuses them. Someone that's a serial entrepreneur, that is their total focus.
They're trying to make that happen as fast and as big as possible.
A big takeaway from this, if our audience is listening, ask yourself that question. Am I trying to create a job for myself, or am I trying to create a standalone business? Neither answer is wrong unless you lie to yourself.
Right.
So look in the mirror, ask yourself the question, and just be honest with yourself. But then from that question, that helps you determine what path should you take, because they are two different paths.
And I'd say once you've made that decision, stick to it, because how you interact with the business from that moment on should be consistent. And if you're flip-flopping, could potentially open you up to liability or just make your life a little harder than it has to be.
You always want to start the business with the end goal in mind. If you have to keep shifting and adjusting as you're moving forward, that's very clunky, it's very dangerous, and it's very expensive.
So why don't we give a couple examples of starting your own business and then creating a job for yourself looks like, so we can make this distinction as clear as possible.
We did the podcast about the entrepreneurial seizure a few weeks ago. And the episode we gave is see the woman who loves to bake, see the woman who opens a bakery. Someone that wants to open up a bakery, open up a donut shop. You see a lot of people want to open up their own restaurant. Those are examples of someone trying to create a job for themselves, and they inevitably create a job for several other people within that venture.
Which is amazing. It's a huge add-on to it.
On the flip side, take the restaurant, I think, is a classic example. Look at Ray Kroc. He wasn't interested in opening a restaurant.
Right.
He bought or acquired the McDonald's franchise. There's a whole movie about that. It's an interesting story. But he was looking at building an empire, which ultimately would accomplish. He wasn't interested in building a burger shack.
That's exactly right. I think the emphasis on the food was a lot less than the emphasis on the process.
If you asked him what his business was, he never said burgers. He always said he was in the real estate business.
That's exactly right. A very famous speech where he asked the crowd on what business he was in and inevitably laid out that it was the business of real estate.
That's a good example of the distinction between creating a job for yourself or creating a standalone business. Typically, with the characteristics of someone that's looking to create a job for themselves, there's a direct involvement, very often on a continuous basis. On the scalable side or a business, you start off with direct involvement. Very often it's only you. but you have to start delegating immediately. If it's a job for yourself, you don't have to delegate very rapidly. You can go for quite a long time with it just being you or in perpetuity.
A lot of people get into it knowing that they're going to be the single laborer, if you will, for that business. And that's the desired outcome.
So there's limited scale or no scale. It's hands-on work, and there's an operational focus. Then on the flip side, we talked about scalability, delegation, but it's also systems and processes and a strategic leadership are different characteristics that separate those two groups.
Starting a job for yourself, a carpenter came to mind, someone that's really interested in the art form of creating custom wood pieces and things like that, knowing that they're always going to be the person doing it. They're going to stand behind their work. Oftentimes, they're getting the ultimate joy out of doing that.
I met an individual who was very interesting. God, it must have been 20 years ago. He built very, very high-end furniture. His target market was just a few city blocks within New York City of extremely wealthy people, and the waiting list to acquire his furniture was 2 years. He would build 8 to 10 pieces a year, and he was easily making $500,000 personally in this business. He hired one assistant, and that was his business. He created a job for himself, doing something he loved, making some serious money. I asked him, why don't you expand this potential to go wide with this? And he said, why are you trying to complicate my life?
And to him, that's the right answer.
I thought it was a pretty good answer, to tell you the truth. I'm like, you're right. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't mess with success. He was achieving what he loved doing. He loved building furniture.
Right, right.
For those who aspire to go higher in their entrepreneurial journey, we've got something just for you. Coming up next.
Are you ready to unlock your entrepreneurial potential? Introducing the Janus Entrepreneurial Report, your personalized roadmap to success. In just minutes, discover your unique strengths and areas for growth. Whether you're a seasoned business pro or just starting out, the Janus Entrepreneurial Report will help you identify and leverage your entrepreneurial tendencies. Don't wait, visit ProfSpirit.com and start your journey to success today.
Now, let's dive back into our journey of entrepreneurial insights.
There are positives, many positive stories to this, probably more positive stories to creating a job for yourself than the other side of creating a standalone business.
Without a doubt. I would say the people I interact with, that's a very common story. The ones that are setting out to do it for themselves are probably getting to a place where they're happy with it faster than the ones that are setting out to start a business, because that's a different animal. It's a different level of complexity, and it can be really hard to remove yourself in that exit point. That's a really big sticking point.
That's what people have a hard time, is giving it up. It's like they're giving up their baby.
100%.
It's almost like their personality is wrapped around, I own this business. And it's very hard to give up their personality, the means of how they can present themselves. It's a struggle for people, where if you look at a serial entrepreneur, they view it as, yeah, it's like a car. I'm done with that car. I'm selling it. They never look back, and they're in their next car driving away.
Yeah. I will say, even though I've been through the process a few times, the first hire that you make in the business that's going to represent it once you phase yourself out is always hard.
I can understand that. You want to make sure everything's right and there's less room for errors, and you're giving up control.
Yes.
Understand there's distinctions with both sides of this coin from lifestyles. There's different lifestyles associated with this. There's different views on income stability and what the goal of income stability will be. Very often in creating a job for yourself, that really is one of the goals, is income stability.
Without a doubt. I think that's why most people would lean in that direction in the first place. That's where that idea genesis comes from.
Personal satisfaction is a distinction too, as I was talking about the artisan that was building furniture. The product was his personal satisfaction. The serial entrepreneur, it's like, I'm building this entity. You think of someone like a Steve Jobs. Their personal satisfaction is a totally different animal.
He wanted the business to thrive. He wanted his name and his impact to be global.
Definitely.
Do we have any tips that we can put out there to distinguish if someone's in their own job and they're wanting to turn it into their own business? A lot of the conversations I have with first-time entrepreneurs is, you have this, and they realize they have created a job where their intent was to create a business.
This would be advice that is for both sides of this coin, but the answers will be different. First, I would say is define your role very clearly. Identify your strengths and set boundaries.
That's super important, isn't it? And that will allow you to see where you might need to bring somebody else on, where you're extending yourself too much. And also define when you're going to leave, what role has to replace yours.
On the building a business side, I would say you want to invest in building a strong team. Not that the strong team is unimportant in creating a job for yourself, but the essence of the scale requires a very, very strong team, especially at the onset. Hire strategically and develop leadership within the team.
That's of huge importance.
From a time perspective, you want to prioritize your time. I don't know if it's easier from the job component versus the scale business side. Both of them can absorb your time, but in different manners and different venues.
Most people would go to, if you're starting a job for yourself, you probably simultaneously have an easier time setting time restrictions and a harder time setting time restrictions. There's no one to fall back on. I can't leave work early knowing that someone else is going to pick up that slack, most likely. But also, if I'm just in it for the lifestyle, I probably have an easier time leaving than if I know my monetary future is based on this business getting off the ground and progressing as quickly as possible.
One of the areas that makes it difficult for me to go into the create a job for myself is very often I'm selling my time and I only have 24 hours a day. I'm limited to the most valuable resource very often. And so it restricts. But then you're saying, well, if I'm selling my time, so instead of working 8 hours, I can work 10 hours, I can work 12 hours. And that can become a problem with prioritizing time. Whereas on creating a scalable business, the options are infinity. There are so many ways that you can get pulled, not just selling my time, just your whole thoughts get pulled in different directions as you're looking strategically to scale and grow the business.
It's funny you say that. It's something I constantly remind myself of because I am definitely in the category of building businesses, not jobs. What I'm reminding myself of is that I need to, as quickly as possible, get out of the equation where I'm trading time for dollars. That's the trap. So as quickly as possible as I can disrupt that equation, time for dollars, the better I'm doing.
When I'm looking at this point in my career, if I'm looking at any business and it is a time for dollars, I don't go into it. So I never get in that trap.
Exactly.
But I know what the trap is, so therefore I avoid it religiously.
Right. And a lot of people are very stuck by the time they talk to me as a consultant or meet me at the Entrepreneurship Center.
If you're stuck, I would start to think of outsourcing non-core activities that can help to unstick you, if you will. Also, you can form strategic partnerships that can separate you from non-critical or leveraging other people's times without building the entity of a large structure.
What I encourage people to focus on is a term called the zone of genius, really sitting down and looking at what their zone of genius is. So where are they excellent? And then taking that information, and if you're not in your zone of genius, someone else should be doing it.
I've always maintained understanding your weaknesses could be your greatest strength.
That's exactly right.
Now, something we're always advising people to do is maintain customer focus. It's a different entity between the job for yourself and the scalable business, because when it's a job for yourself, the customer focus, well, they're in front of you. You're speaking with them continuously. Whereas if you're creating a scalable business, the more it scales, the further removed you are from the customers. That is a very critical danger point. If you're in that scenario, always get back to, I want customer feedback.
Right. Somehow keeping that ear to the ground, even though you're moving farther away from it. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Both paths can be fulfilling and financially rewarding, but understand the distinction and make a conscious choice early on. It can set the foundation for your future success and personal satisfaction.
That's a great way to end it. Let's get entrepreneurial.
Let's get entrepreneurial.
As we wrap up another episode of the Let's Get Entrepreneurial podcast, we extend our gratitude for your presence and attention. Your dedication to the entrepreneurial spirit fuels our passion for creating this podcast. Check out ProfSpirit entrepreneurshipedcation.com to discover resources and courses designed specifically for innovators like you. Stay on the cutting edge by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and other platforms as it is released. Until then, keep the entrepreneurial flame burning.